All right, welcome to the Squat Plug. Today's episode, we are joined by Brooke Reynolds. She had a bit of a situation, I want to say a while back with, an ex-boyfriend and dealt with some very serious problems, I guess, with him. And it ultimately ended up with her departing from the USAPL and moving over to PL. So she's here to talk to us about her experience there, what happened in the meantime, and where she's currently at right now and what she plans on doing in the future. Brooke, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about some serious things, but also hopefully some giggles too. So, we all got to have some laughs.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Try
All
to
right.
keep it as lighthearted as we can.
So, Mark, where do you think we should start?
I think you could just give us a little bit of background on, who you are and I guess how you got involved in, not, you don't have to go like all the way back, but your experience with powerlifting, what sort of led you to, the situation you found yourself in, and then we can, go from there.
All right. Starting with the easy stuff, I see. So a lot of people don't know, but I started powerlifting just about 10 years ago. I feel like this is the typical end of college experience for a lot of people. I fell into some bad habits. I used to play basketball a lot.
That's a bad habit.
Basketball is a very bad habit.
I'm
Terrible
getting
habit.
to it. Horrible lifestyle. But no, I used to play heavily, like very often with the guys, pick up, but I fell off of that. I gained some weight in college, wanted to get back in shape, started doing P90X, which I think is hilarious.
I've
But
done that as well.
hey,
Holy
you know
shit.
what though?
That's Yuli's thing.
I did not know how to lift a dumbbell, so it actually taught me a lot of things and helped me build comfort going into barbell work. So I'm grateful for that weird time in my life. But I was around some people who powerlifted at my college, Rensselaer Polytech in New York, and they had the grace to be like, "Hey, come in and I'll teach you how to squat." Learned how to squat, was like, "Oh my God, this is so much fucking better than running on the treadmill. Let's do more of this." Then I eventually learned to deadlift. I befriended the strength coach at college. I was working in the gym and he shared 5-3-1 with me. Mark is probably twitching right now, but it did get me
I
started.
mean,
It got me
arguably,
strong.
like 5-3-1 is probably one of the better sort of like OG strength templates out there, to be honest.
I started with 5x5s. Like after P90X, went to 5x5s, like strong lifts, the
Yeah.
app.
Yeah,
Yep.
starting strength, all that good stuff. I mean, they are solid, right? But then when you get into individual needs, that's when they can be very bad. But it got me to a 330-pound squat, so I'll take it.
At least you didn't start with Smolov. Some people say that, and you're like, oh my goodness.
I don't think I'd still be lifting now if I started there.
I went from 5x5 to Smolov to Shaco. That was my progression before I actually, weaned myself off of like the generic templates out there.
So Shaco must have been a reprieve from.
But yes, Smolov Jr. Yeah, so that was not easy.
You don't say. Happy with the 5-3-1 start. But anyway, I was like, I learned squat, deadlift, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll bench. Oh, have always hated that fucking lift. And so it'll kill Soph every time. But I'm like, Soph, you're not going to get me to like benching. I'm sorry. But I learned all three and I was like, well, there's literally nothing stopping me from just going out there and trying a competition. So the very first one I did, I think it was an Eric Cordero meet. It was in Rockland, Mass at some hotel. It was I had no belt, no sleeves, nothing, just me. And I had a great time. I did pretty well, fell in love with the process, did another one, had a hip labrum situation when I started trying to dabble in sumo completely by myself. I actually ended up having surgery on it, so I took a little time off. The surgery, I think, was a worthwhile venture because the pain was like immediately resolved. But fast forward, did a couple more competitions around 2016, 2017, got pregnant with my son, had him, stayed at home. And then around when COVID hit is when I started training more seriously. And I was like, okay, I think I have real potential here. I'm getting pretty damn strong. My squat is very heavy. Maybe I'll find a coach. Found a coach, started training hard. Wound up at nationals for the first time in Vegas. And then I've been every year since then, except this year I'm taking off, taking a little break. So that is the powerlifting lore for me.
So have you gotten into BJJ yet?
Actually, I did.
That pipeline is alive and
It
well.
is so strong. Listen, after nationals,
Brooke did the powerlifting to pole dancing pipeline instead.
I am a forge your own path type of girl. Okay. But no,
I respect it.
did.
I respect it.
There was a niche and it was needed. No, I did try BJJ after nationals in 2020.
Did you really? That's so
Yeah,
funny.
a lot of people don't know that because it was very short-lived, but I actually really loved it. And then my coach at the time, and I'll give him credit, he was right. He was like, "You're gonna kind of wreck your powerlifting progress here if you do this." And I was like, "Fine." So I stopped, and I'll go back someday.
The shoulders and the elbows particularly take a beating in BJJs. What do you find?
Even even when you're just drilling, it's like a minefield of torque on all
I
joints.
mean, that's like the name of the game, right? Is like
Yeah.
people are literally trying to apply torque to your
Oh.
joints.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that just doesn't sound good. I'd rather do that myself with a barbell, just saying.
You know, it's just the Kimuras and the submissions and that kind of stuff. Just there's a lot going on with it. The other thing also, you don't moderate like RPE. It's like every session is like an RPE 10 session. Everything you do is like just balls to the walls. It's like mind over matter, that kind of stuff. You know, there's no way to really work that into something like a powerlifting structure, I find, or to really maintain your strength there. You're getting beat up, and also it's just basically it's a different type of like movement pattern altogether. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
There are some resistance elements to it. I mean, like as you're like pushing and pulling against somebody, you get that, but you're doing that for like like hours on end.
Yeah, it's one of those externals that you literally have so little control over, and you're adding the element of another human to it. Forget it.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can't
and then
control it.
and the people change as well. You may be training, I guess, the light dude who's quick and like what you call it, agile one day. They may have the heavy dudes like pressing on your chest the next day after that. You know, there's a lot going on there. I tried doing both that and powerlifting at the same time. Didn't work out. And anybody who I've worked with in the past who's done BJJ and powerlifting, it's always been the limiting reagent. You know, they had a rough BJJ session. There go deadlifts. There go squats. You know.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that kind of goes for, I feel like, almost any sort of side quest that people like to do. It's like, hey, I can only tolerate or I only have the capacity for so much stress in my life. And my stress cup, if you will, is already almost filled to the brim with all this life stuff and powerlifting training. But you know what? I'm going to go do another thing that's going to overflow the cup. And we're going to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Things will work out.
And then in order to keep the fucking cup from overflowing, it's like, now you just suck at both things.
Bro, it's active recovery, okay? Listen.
Okay. It's like you're gonna suck even more at powerlifting now, and you're gonna suck at your newfound skill even more. You're gonna have no capacity to develop or acquire.
Bro, I feel so drained. Why is my morale so low?
Why am I not sleeping?
Yeah,
I can't even eat anything. I want to just sit
no
here.
idea.
I just want to sit here on the couch and stare at the ceiling.
Burnt out, you know?
Yeah, so that's why I put myself in competition jail for now, because I am exploring and having so much fun with the aerials, not just pole, not just ho shit, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it's very taxing on the upper body. So
I'm sure.
I can imagine. Yeah. You know, like the core as well. Like you're really like squeezing tight and whatnot, trying to keep yourself balanced.
I'm sure it's fun though to explore other avenues of movement, if you will.
As we know, as we know, based on today, it's something I've been needing on like a very deep level to just have fun moving again.
Yeah, no, I hear. We respect it. So you're taking a break from competitive powerlifting right now. When you get back into the mix, from what I understand, it'll be in PLA.
It will.
Let's talk about what informed that decision.
So that decision was made based on I call it response, but let's call it what it is, the complete, utter silence and lack of response of USA Powerlifting to the domestic violence I suffered from one of their lifters, Dan Howell, their national champion from last year. So I'm not quite where to begin there, but I dated him from February 2022, I believe, to February 2023. And it was
Hold on a second.
I have a plane going over.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And good.
Good. Pick up where we left off?
Yes.
It was not a good relationship pretty much from like the third month onward. There's a lot that I actually haven't shared. I know like I have this reputation of someone who will just spill all, but the amount of things I haven't shared in general way outpace what I've shared. But it just was very unhealthy, and unfortunately, I have a reputation. Some people believe that I'm problematic in the sport as it is because I'm vocal about certain things. Fully understand that does not help me in the case of people believing what happened. And then you have someone like me who's like, I show up authentically. I don't give a fuck about my reputation and how I'm perceived. I live my life authentically. People know exactly where they stand with me, and that's one of my values. And unfortunately, the person who hurt me has crafted over many, many years this persona in the sport. And he is seen as somebody very kind, very well versed in mental health, very supportive, very caring about the community. Ultimate good guy, which by the way is the textbook profile of an abuser. If anybody
So
is,
let me just actually rewind back to what you talked
yeah,
about earlier about like your reputation in the community and that kind of stuff.
yeah,
How you know to be like a troublemaker and that kind of stuff. Um, that's what's going to happen when you call out people who do not want to be called out on their antics. They will do everything they can to undermine you, whatever it is that they can to basically reduce people's opinion of you out there. And it's something which just people expect. You're going to have that happen when you have antagonists out there. As you're telling the truth, they are going to do these things. They are going to try to besmirch you as much as possible. The issue is that the community doesn't recognize this taking place. Like you're being manipulated into believing this person's a bad person based off the fact that they're reporting what actually took place with them and whatnot. They're putting the facts out there and whatnot. And there's like, there's no benefit from you. I guess I mentioned this stuff here. Like you win nothing in the process. You have a lot to lose in this, and they don't see that. It's something I've seen over the past few years as we've been like, taking on these like issues and presenting them and so on and so forth. That takes place quite a bit. And it's just like, like, of course people are going to talk shit about me. And of
yeah,
course they're going to talk shit about you. What
yeah.
it comes down to basically is you're exposing people out there and they don't want to be exposed for having done so. So of course they're going to come at your credibility. They're going to come at your reputation and that kind of stuff. So
What I sorry, I didn't mean to continue.
I just say like as a logical person with that, you have to be able to say, okay, of course this person's going to talk shit. Therefore, I'm not going to let that cloud my judgment of this person because I know where this person's coming from as opposed to the person who they're coming at. Mark?
I was just going to say what I find interesting is people, men especially, and they're sort of biased towards taking the side of the guy, of the man, not, and not, I don't want to say not believing the female. I don't want to turn it into like this dichotomy thing, but I've talked to, and I'm not going to name any names, but during the time when the situation was going on, I talked to a few friends of mine who, the narrative was like, well, I've always had good experiences with Dan Howell, so I just can't see how he could do something like that. And it's like, so it's just your first inclination is to take his side and not even hear out the other perspective. You know what I mean? Like that just I found that part of it very, very interesting.
I hate to say it. There's so much I could share today about myself and my personal history and my life dating way back before this, but I have seen this take place before and I expected this to play out the way it did.
Yeah, like it's not even you, it's more of a societal problem. You know what I mean? Because when you say even the community at large took Dan's side, not everybody, but like, there was a large portion of the community that kind of just stood with Dan and didn't really hear you out.
Yes.
And I mean, not that I've known you for like the whole 10 years you've been powerlifting, but I've never heard your name in the context of being sort of problematic or lying about stuff or making up scenarios. Like, so I just don't know why that's the immediate sort of go-to was like, well, she's just making it up. You know what I mean? It just like, it speaks to a larger societal problem, right? Like people just sort of taking that stance of supporting, the man versus the woman.
You see that happening a lot. Like I saw that happen with Joe Stanek. I saw that happen with Joe Sullivan. With Joe Sullivan, I had a very big name in powerlifting hit me up in the DMs out of the blue.
God forbid a woman coach started ripping people off. Oh my God.
Yeah,
she would be out of powerlifting so fast.
Yeah, I agree. So this guy hits me up and it basically essentially, says, you're coming up as a coach and so on and so forth. You're growing a name for yourself. You're going to destroy your reputation with this one. And essentially, like telling me to shut the fuck up about this. I was right in everything I reported. And he was right in the end. Ultimately, he said basically, you're going to do this entire thing and nothing's going to come of it, whatnot. And I agree to an extent that, he was correct because Joe Sullivan's still doing Joe Sullivan shit. But in the aftermath of that, quite a few people stopped working with Joe Sullivan. He lost a lot of lifters. That entire like little cadre and whatnot. Not that was my aim. My aim was basically for him to get to honestly, when it comes down to all these individuals, is to correct that behavior. I'm not here to fucking punish people. Whatever the case happens to be, it's like fucking like, all right, like let's make your life miserable. It's no, let's fucking like let's have a change take place here. Accountability, take ownership of your actions, whatnot, and take steps to never make it happen again. With these individuals, you just don't see that happening. Speaking about your situation about women when they report on these problems, I got a chance to see this firsthand. It was, I want to say, like a very enlightening experience for me. To see like, they come up with their stories about what they experienced with Ashton, Ashton Bailey, aka Too Buff for This. And I had about 180 plus women come up with their own stories and like tell me what their experiences were. And time again, people would be there to debunk it and to basically talk this crap and so on and so forth. So Goob would be out there trying to undermine my statements and have his like swarm of followers at me. Meantime, for less credible shit, like he'd have like, out on his fucking page and whatnot, lambasting people and that kind of stuff. It's like, like where's, what's actually taking place here? It got to the point that the initial person who reported the, I want to say the creepy DMs, she was 15 at the time, between her and Ashton, literally just ghosted us. The backlash she received from the community, that we received from the community, whatnot, turned her off, and it shut this victim down. That's what took place.
That's what happens.
Yes, and this is what took place with you as well. I saw what took place, and it's not just people in the community or a large part of the community. It's the people who matter in the community, the people who are supposed to be the pillars of like ethics and so on and so forth. The people basically who make this who outwardly project as though they make this place a better place. And then you see that they're essentially saying, maybe not. I'm cool with this guy, therefore this is false, instead of letting it rock. When it comes to other situations and whatnot, they're all like, it has nothing to do with me. But in this situation, they get involved and they undermine instead of hearing out and giving you a platform.
There's so much I could say on that, honestly. I mean, I wanted to share a little bit about when I first started talking about this, if now is a good time, because something that, and I want people to understand too, like if I were to be able to present like how I went about this and like how I was calculated in certain ways, I had to do a lot of work up front to figure out, okay, who can I really fucking trust? And who, if I share something with them, is going to immediately rat it to Dan. I found that out real quick. So when I first shared what happened, and many, many different iterations of me sharing different things. But when I first shared, I crafted a close friend story on Instagram very intentionally to include certain state chairs in our surrounding states. I have no reason to name them here. I'm not coming after people personally, but I added a couple state chairs. I added a couple people from the gym that we had until that point both gone to. People I thought I had a good relationship with and genuinely felt betrayed by. And I was able to figure out who shared things with him. I included a few people I had, passing romantic interest in that were also friendly with Dan. I included people that I was on the fence about. And I was like, all right, let's see if this gets back to him. It did immediately. He brought things to court that would only have been brought to him by screenshotting my close friend stories. He brought some really weird fucking arguments to court. I will say that. But yeah, like you have to be very careful. And like, so my first work was, the final incident with him was January 28th in my bedroom right here, actually. I left my own home that week. Soph is the very first person I told because I had like, in the spirit of managing stress, I was like, hey, coach, I don't have a home this week. Here's the affidavit I wrote. I don't know what to tell you. I know you didn't sign up for this, but like, this is my stress right now. That's hard for a coach too. I commend her for being like absolutely in my corner this whole time to date with all of this chaos. But my work up front was navigating the community. And I knew that I would have to talk about it because this is my sport too. I am not letting his bullshit kick me out of my own sport that I've been in just as long as him. I'm sorry. He will not win that way. So that was a lot of work on me, a lot of labor up front to figure out who's going to say he spots me at the gym all the time, so he's not an abuser, versus who's going to look at this critically and say, yes, bad people are often wrapped in pretty packages in society.
People are incredibly irrational is what you find. Through all the controversies I've had and whatnot, like I've had some people who were very close to me and whatnot, still affiliated with some people who did some very nasty shit. And it's a very weird experience to see them, like, like you've heard my story. You've seen what they've done. You generate no benefit from associating with these people, and yet there you are. In your instance as well, the same thing, even doubly so. Look what the person did, and still those people maintain those affiliations. Like we have some serious problems, I want to say, in society and whatnot, like in just how people operate and what their priorities are. Some very shitty friends, I'm going to say, they're out there. So like to a very large extent, it's cooled me quite a bit as far as my rapport with many people. I'm a lot more careful with who I keep my circle and so on and so forth. But I can only imagine how you're feeling here. So I see you taking a break from lifting and that kind of stuff. It only makes sense. Now, let's continue the story further. That was before. That was like the build up and whatnot. What took place later on?
So are we talking after February?
Yes.
So I had been signed up for New Hampshire States, which was put on by one of his very good friends, somebody who was also one of my very first phone calls because, just to very briefly go back and give context, as any domestic violence victim has to do, you have to be very careful when you're planning to leave because that's the time you're most likely to be most hurt. And the situation was showing as such. So I had made a safety plan and I abruptly left my own home because he had refused to leave when I asked him to. And that was very scary and dangerous for me because he's not on my lease and he had multiple places he could have gone. I had nowhere else to go. So, like, right then and there, if anyone wants to criticize my story, I dare you to be in my shoes and experience the fear involved with somebody just straight up saying, no, I'm not leaving, even for a night. That is fucking terrifying. That is so scary.
And then what people like aren't realizing is that you're hoping that the situation de-escalates. You don't want to take it to police. You don't want to blow the situation up. You're hoping this person comes to their senses and they basically they ease up and say, I'm fucking up right now, and that didn't take place.
No, I even before I broke up with him, I asked him to leave for one singular night under the pretext of, hey, we've been fighting a lot. I think we need space. He looked me in the eyes, dead serious, and said no. That's fucking scary. But anyway, to continue the timeline, one of the very first calls I made, because when I left my home on a Sunday, I left him a note and it said, hey, Dan, domestic violence is never okay. No matter what's going on, I want you to leave my premises. I will not return until you're gone. I left him that note. I have it somewhere. I have everything recorded. He came home when I was out and about. I started getting a bunch of frantic messages. I started getting the mental health card. Hey, I'm not doing well. I'm having a panic attack. Please don't do this. I can't do this. Frantic phone calls. Again, textbook stuff. If you have educated yourself on this level of manipulation, this is textbook. I knew this was going to happen because despite having found myself in this situation, I'm well educated on these dynamics. I did feel bad, and I wanted to honor the fact that he could very well be having panic attacks right now. I will not return to my home. I know what this is, and I'm not falling for it. However, I'm going to do my due diligence and have someone do a mental health check on him. So I made a phone call to somebody very close to him, somebody with power in this federation on multiple levels. I think we all know who we're talking about. I have no reason to name him. We have had conversations. We're at peace with each other. I am not looking to stir the pot on this at all. I have love for this person, but they didn't handle this right. And that's a fact. But I made that phone call and I said, hey, I'm very sorry to have to pull you into this, but there's a mental health crisis and I did not know who else to call who knows him well. This is really awkward for me. And this person on the phone said, are you okay? You don't sound okay. I said, no, I'm not fucking okay. I'm getting a restraining order. I'm not okay. But he's also not okay, or so he says. So I need someone to check on him.
Mhm.
That was the end of my communication with that person. Unfortunately, I feel that he should have done due diligence and followed up with me just from a legal standpoint as a business owner to see hey, did anything happen at the gym? There were a lot of assumptions on his side that were made that were incorrect. I'll say that. But moving forward, I was competing March 30th. So 6 weeks after this at this state championship, first meet with Soph, debut as a 67, super exciting comeback for me. Well, this throws a wrench into everything, from a training standpoint, but we still got it done. I had my best showing of the year. Mark, you were there. It was a great time. It was a good fucking day. However, guess who's in the back room chatting away with another state official in my face? Do you remember that, Mark? Yeah, that was calculated. But at the time, I'm an athlete. I'm locking in and I'm doing what I committed for myself. I think a weaker person, and if this is not wrong, you do what you have to do. Somebody not as resilient of me would have pulled out of that meet immediately. I said, no, I committed this to myself and I'm not letting this person ruin this for me. However, I had to deal with my abuser, who, by the way, I had an active restraining order against. There was no distance clause, and that's his loophole. But I had the whole no abuse order, no firearms, everything but the distance. And boy, does he love to play with that in this community. He loves to play with that distance absence. So he's standing in the warm-up room, not coaching, not volunteering, not helping. Why the fuck is he there? I don't know. Because the person running that meet was well aware of the restraining order.
Yeah.
I have
It was
no
he just
fucking
wanted to show his face back there so you'd see him.
Yeah, he was being threatening and a creepy, intimidating person. But anyway, great day. So like I get through that meet. I was friendly with the person directing the meet because at that time I was well aware that I'm seen as a problem. And I was like very grateful that he came up to me and chatted with me, he meaning the person running the meet. I was very grateful that he and I were still friendly with each other. I was terrified about the dynamics going into that day. In hindsight, though, I don't think he was right for how he handled that. But anyway, that meet happened, right? So again, I'm trying to avoid saying gym names. I have no reason to give people fuel to think that I'm being vindictive anymore, because honestly, fuck that. It's not why I'm talking about this. But we all know the gym that I started training at again, I believe. I get a text message on a Saturday the week or two after that meet. Hey, just so you know, Dan's at the gym. I'm like, oh, okay, is he just here on a, like, he hasn't stepped foot into this gym. I had begged him to go there to train with me while we were together. He always said, nah, fuck that place. I don't like the people there, by the way. A lot of things said behind the scenes, not a fake friend, fake ass friend. But he was there. So luckily I wasn't training that day. I get him, I show up the following weekend. I'm in the middle of my lift. Guess who comes in? So that was a really horrible day. I was like, I was on the verge of panic attacks. I had to step outside and like almost throw up. Every single person in that fucking gym knew what was happening and nobody said a word. Now I'm getting riled up because that pisses me off. Everybody in that room knew the deal and they were still working with him. Nobody asked him to leave. I'm sorry. That is
No, no,
not
no,
okay.
absolutely not.
Like,
I'll
that
feel the
is not
exact same
okay.
way. And I've had incidents like this in the past, you know? People fucking suck. People are fucking cowards. Anybody who you're talking
That's
about
what
right
it
now
is.
is absolute fucking dipshit and a piece of fucking shit human being. Like literal fucking human smegma. They can go fuck themselves. And if they have any issues with this, they can fucking DM me. We can fucking meet up, all that kind of shit. I don't give two shits.
Say it. For the record, I did not say it.
I'm saying it.
Don't crash out, Yuli.
I'm saying it.
Calm down.
No, but legit, like, you know, she's upset about by this, but
I
I've
am
experienced
upset.
this myself. It fucking sucks. We see
It
just how
sucks.
fucking corny people are. You derive no benefit from this. You're not dependent upon this person. You are fucking supporting the fucking shenanigans and not calling it out.
People who don't even like him.
Yeah, I
People who
know.
on their own
Yeah.
didn't even like him sucking his dick at the gym in front of me.
It's like people who boot like billionaires. It's like, oh, but
Why?
but I might be in the same, like we might be friends one day, so I have to like act accordingly just in case.
Fucking
know?
brainlets. Brainlets.
So anyway, yeah. So then I find out he was there for a third weekend in a row. At that point, like I felt that it wasn't necessary to talk to the gym owner, but I know in my heart, had I had a conversation with that gym owner, he would have been like, you'll never see him there again. To this day, that man is a shining light in the community. But anyway, 3 weekends in a row, he shows up. I called it out on my Instagram. People evidently told him he was wrong for that. Good, because he was.
Mark's airplanes.
You know what I think it is? It's the first nice day, and I think it's like small planes, like small Cessnas flying around. Because usually,
Yes.
like the commercial flights they do are like 2 a day, and that's it.
But it's also Saturday, so I can imagine it's probably
Okay.
So he's in at the gym again for the umpteenth weekend.
Yeah, so after that, I'm trying to remember. I think I ultimately decided not to have a conversation with the gym owner because at that time I didn't want to pull any more people into it than I needed to. So and then it dropped off. So I'm like, all right, I think maybe someone closer to him said, "Dude, stop." Like, I don't know what happened, but he stopped going and I was really grateful for that. So, that's April. Then I'm set to compete in June at regionals, right? No, he's going to be there. We had originally signed up to compete there together. So I know the deal. I was very nervous because it was an overnight stay and I just like I felt unsafe staying there alone the night before, but I did it and it was fine. I very much kept to myself, won that competition, which was very fun. My first, I had a friend who was originally planning to compete. She ended up pulling out and I was so disappointed because it was supposed to be like, it was going to be like a fight. I was going to have to work for the win. That would have been my first experience. And I felt so honored to be at a point where I would have to fight for a win like that. But anyway,
Still kicking myself in the ass for not signing us up for the team points.
I listened to that in the last, I was like, I'm sorry. Wait, I even asked you guys, how can I register you? And you weren't on the thing.
That's all
Or
right.
how can I register? That's all right. Another time in another fed. So I won that. And then I skedaddled pretty quickly after because I didn't want to be around for his part. And I just didn't want to be around. I felt uncomfortable in the community and I just wanted to go home. So I went home, saw that he won. And then I saw on, it's Instagram, like seeing the person who hurt you and knowing that you have shared with important people already and you have been fairly vocal, and seeing them absolutely praise him for, honestly, I don't even think he did that great that day. Let's be honest, okay? Can we be honest for a minute? He's not he's not that good, and he doesn't perform well consistently. And that's the truth. Maybe we edit this out. But
No, we can keep that in.
him, yeah,
Facts
it's
are
true
facts.
though. Facts are facts. He doesn't show up consistently at competitions. Um, but like seeing him absolutely lauded and praised online for his win, I completely snapped. And that was the time, you guys might remember, when I just rattled off deep, deep details about every single instance along the way of shit that he did to me. That picked up like wildfire. I don't think it helped me at all. I think it raised more questions and made me look insane. But people started to learn, or at least be aware that that's a story circulating. But I went off. I went into deep, deep detail around like the day at the gym we were at, when I texted him asking him, "Hey, I'd like it if you would stay somewhere else tonight. I think I'd like some space." He looked at me in the mirror from across the gym with the most threatening glare I could ever possibly like convey to you guys while I was mid-set deadlifting. And this is the shit that like the owner of that gym should have asked me before seeking legal counsel of how to handle it, to confirm or deny, did anything actually happen at the gym? Because like the answer is yes. They're subtle things, but things happened there. Um, but anyway, like I went into that level of granular detail on a lot of instances in which he was either like, just intimidating from afar or physically harmed me. So I just went off. I think it was like as soon as his win was announced, because I was just so, not even just angry. I felt betrayed and discarded like trash by the community. I did. It was such a betrayal. And like, I can't even begin to describe how hurtful that was to watch everyone just praise him. One interesting thing I did want to talk about today is what surprised me the most is the behavior of some women in the community, not even the
I've
men.
seen that. Pick me energy. Absolute
Yeah,
pick me energy.
that's what I call it. So like I will share, again, no interest in sharing names. I don't have a personal issue. No, I'm not coming after this person. If I never see her or speak with her again, it'll be too soon, because what the fuck. But somebody, when I first started sharing in February, DM'd me and said, "I'm so sorry. Like I went through this myself. Like every year I donate and like I give back to like a domestic violence shelter around Christmas. Like that's what helps me." Super kind, right?
Yeah.
Tell me why she left a comment on Dan's post saying how amazing it is that he showed up and helped so much and what a bright light in the community he is.
Borderline
That
personality
was,
disorder is a hell of a thing.
listen, I'm well aware of what that is.
That's fucking insane.
I don't know. I to this day I have questions, but at the end of the day, it's not worth my energy. It's truly not. But like, how can you, as a fellow DV victim, do that to somebody? I don't know. But she has blocked me on Instagram. I don't know why.
Guilty conscience,
Maybe she feels guilty. I don't know. I've been blocked by a few interesting names, I'll tell you that, like unprompted. Yeah.
Interesting.
Good riddance, I say.
Yeah, like I said, like I don't fuck with that person. I'm all set. You've shown me where you stand. She was also like, when I first started dating Dan, she was stalking me pretty heavy on Instagram. So I'm almost wondering if she had a crush on him or something. I thought that behavior was weird up front, but like that's a sidebar. So yeah, regionals happen. We could say I crashed out. I think I crashed out about 6 times between then and now.
Sometimes you need a good crash out, It's like a good cry.
Yeah.
Makes you feel better.
I mean, people call it crash outs
like,
whatnot.
Hey, I'm the expert here on crashing out.
It's legit. Like maybe it's warranted. Maybe the attention needs to be brought to this topic and whatnot. Calling it a crash out? Come on, dude. Like people love to fucking undermine all kinds of shit. No, but it's all right. So like I think
I know we're joking, but about it being a crash out, but it is something that needs to be brought to light in the public eye,
Which is why I decided to just go on a tirade sharing information. I was like, all right, I can see that nobody cares, but what if I share more details, right?
It's wild that that's the response too. It's almost like people are just like, they just want to look away. It's like, please don't
Yep.
share things or
Yeah.
or post things that are going to make me personally uncomfortable, and like I just don't want to see it.
I want to maintain rapport with you, whatnot. I value, but I don't give two shits about the stuff you're dealing with in your life.
Basically,
You know, like, and they're both
Yeah.
at odds with one another. That does not work out. That's not how this shit fucking works out, bro.
And I can relate and I can empathize with that discomfort, because sometimes you see someone sharing something deeply personal. It's like, oh my God, I don't know how to process this and I can't deal with it. I understand that that's probably how some people felt. But at the same time, when it's shared with people in positions of power in this federation, from what I understand, they have a written duty to report this shit and they didn't. So yeah, that happened in June. Then of course we have nationals in September. And I'm like, all right, this torture train is just continuing to roll. So right after regionals is when Soph encouraged me to report through Safe Sport, right? And it's like there's this perception, or like at the time I was like, Safe Sport will save me.
Yeah.
It will make it safe for me again. God, was that wrong? So like to
Safe
add
Sport,
here,
a product of the patriarchy.
Safe Sport, I'm on the side of the organization and will
Pretty
silence
much.
anyone against it.
Basically,
Yeah.
HR.
Yeah, for businesses. Yeah, that makes total sense. Anyway, just to add a detail, right after I left Dan, I reached out to the ex before me, and I want to be very respectful of her privacy here because I know she can't handle being bothered with this anymore. She already did so much for me, and you guys know her. But
Yes.
that was scary, right? Because in my relationship with him, the things that he said about her, you'd think she'd be in a mental institution. And like, as I started to feel, it was very interesting, the evolution of our abusive relationship, because he didn't want to talk about her. And now I understand why, because he doesn't want to open that door because she has things to say too. But I finally got from him information, and he played it all up like she had some severe mental issues, and like he it was kind of like the sob story of like, I did whatever I could and I finally had to protect my peace and leave. But I will say, you know, in this relationship with him only lasted 10 months for me. So like it's not really, in this grand scheme of things, a long relationship. But, you know, around the halfway point, I started to think to myself, you know, the stories he's telling about her, I'm feeling similarly to how she felt based on his accounts of things. And then like my mental health started to deteriorate really badly. I'm not going to try to re-say that word. That was very But you know, like I was looking at my life, and like I have a history of like on and off like little depressive episodes here and there, but like, you know, who doesn't? So like I keep close tabs on that, where I'm at, and I notice the signs of a decline in myself, but usually it has to do with externals. And for me, I was killing it in my career. My son was thriving. I was in a good place until Dan meddled with my co-parent. He really disrupted that too. And I was like, why am I feeling so depressed? Like the math isn't mathing. My life is very good right now. And like, so I started with a new therapist as well. And like, long story short, like it was him. He tanked my mental health, and I started just taking note of the stories he would tell about the ex before me. And I'm like, hey, I'm feeling that exact same way. And I started to put the pieces together, and I'm like, yeah, he likely did this to her. So like, I worked up the bravery to reach out to her because she's in the community again. Like she started working with somebody close
Good
to
for
me
her.
again. Yeah, I'm so proud of that girl. We're friends, by the way. Like, I'll love for her. Like, it's a weird way to bond with somebody, but like, she's truly a beautiful person.
She's great. Like I've met her. We've
Yeah.
met in person. You know, we've had
She's a sweetheart.
great conversations. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a sweetheart.
So like, and then it just infuriates you to see that he's done that to so many people who are genuinely good. But anyway, I reached out to her. She corroborated everything. In fact, he was a lot worse to her, and she had, as you guys know, an audio file and 2 photos of him physically attacking her from her security camera. Now, while all this is taking place and I'm aware nobody fucking believes me, I'm the crazy person, I'm sitting on all of that. And out of respect for her, I'm like, I cannot morally and ethically release this without her permission, because this will re-traumatize her too. So what people don't understand in the background is that I had that the whole time. And like, I chose to do what I felt was the right thing and not release it. I could have been a dick. I could have been like, here. But like, what would that do to another victim? Like, it's not, I can't listen to that ever again. It raises my blood pressure. I can't do it. It triggers me. And like where I stopped as you know, it gets so much fucking worse. But like my strategy around releasing that was I'm only going to put out as much as I need. I'm not doing this. But anyway, I reached out to her. She confirmed everything. So I started the safe sport process. Investigator. I don't know. Do we want to say the name?
Yes, by all means. This
The
guy is a problem.
investigator. Yeah, he is a problem. I think this is the next step in the journey for whoever wants to take this on, not me. Scott Gray is the USAPL investigator for safe sport complaints. If you Google him, there is a very high profile case of a highly abusive women's hockey coach that he covered and reported no findings on after dozens of interviews. Very, very, very sketchy. One of my friends in the powerlifting community is a hockey coach herself. She knew about it. Like I have dated a strength coach outside of powerlifting since this situation who knew that name. And knew of him as kind of a sketchy guy. Like he's well known in all strength and sports. He was super responsive with me right away, acted super concerned. I told him the whole deal. He said, yeah, this sounds like a real problem. Sounds like this guy's a real problem. I I asked for permission to give him the name of two of Dan's former athletes who had conversations with me and felt that he was a bit emotionally manipulative as a coach and like really didn't like how he communicated with them. They like he had a mass exodus from his roster even before I outed him. So he wasn't treating people terribly right. So I gave Scott Gray, I gave him the name of the ex who at the time said, yeah, I'll talk to him. I gave him the name of the two athletes. He called the ex the same day. She didn't realize that her name would be put out there as a witness, and she was afraid of him, so she had to step down. She was terrified of Dan. And frankly terrified of being treated the way I've been treated. And that's a big part of the reason she never said anything. There's a whole storyline there too.
Safe Sport has done some really ridiculous things over the years. Very recently, more recently, Craig Lemieux out in Wisconsin, if I remember source correctly, had his run-in with him as well. A false accusation was levied against him, regards to his relationship with his, I believe, fiancée now or his wife now, while they were dating. And now, when this stuff happens, you're supposed to keep it under wraps. Under no circumstance are you supposed to let the accuser know who's making accusations about you. And I think, like, I don't want to, like, I can't say for sure, but it, what I can't say for sure is one of these safe sport investigators who may, who could have been Scott Gray, I'm not sure if it was, actually approached Craig and let him know about the accusation, who was making it.
I remember that story.
Bro, what in the actual fuck? Like,
That is
holy
not,
crap.
that's not in their written policy.
Yeah, no, how do you do something like that? You're supposed to keep it anonymous. You're doing an investigation, aren't you? You don't want to tip the person off to being investigated against. So I can only imagine what other information was disclosed to Dan. And I get a feeling quite a bit of it was, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, because she declined to talk, that kind of hurt, the witness part of it. But it is what it is. There should have been enough. I submitted the audio, I submitted the photos, and I submitted the restraining order to him. And I told him of the times at the gym when Dan, like, for example, if I was upset with him one day, we were fighting a lot. And like, the thing that people don't understand about abusive relationships is that there's a thing called reactive abuse. And the victim just has enough. And like, I wasn't acting quite right toward the end. I was very cool with him myself. I just was done with his shit and his hypocrisy and lying and cheating. I was done with it all. So like, I was
And
frequently angry
cheating.
with, yeah, we can talk about that too. He cheated very early on and I caught him. That was actually the beginning of the downfall in which like where I got trapped further and it was harder to get out. But yeah, cheating, long-standing pattern of cheating on multiple partners too. So, that checks out. But I had enough of him. And so anyway, I even told Scott Gray of the time at that gym where, and again, it's subtle, but here's an example of the manipulation and how I was so stuck and couldn't talk about anything. I was upset with him. I was already at the gym first. He came in. I didn't turn around to say hi. I was fucking pissed at him. I wanted to be left alone. Now, keep in mind, we're in a space where he's been very friendly with these people for 5-6 years. They are not my people. They will never take my side. I knew that from the jump. Like, they were nice to me in relation to Dan. I don't think they really ever liked me. So I'm very aware of these things. I'm not stupid when it comes to social dynamics by any means. But I didn't want to talk to him. He approaches me from behind, and like my back injury was flaring up bad at that time, and he knew it. I was laying on my heating pad every night. I was having trouble getting upright in the morning. It was during a bad flare up. He kicks in the back of my knee to make it buckle as a greeting. Now, think about how subtle this is, though, in a gym environment. Nobody's going to see it. So if I react the way I want to react, turn around and fucking scream at him to never do that again, who's going to look crazy?
Then, yeah, you.
Yeah. So I didn't. I ate it. I ate it and went home with him that night. But anyway, like I shared all that with Scott Gray. After that first phone call, I never heard from him again. After I sent him the audio and the photos after the other ex declined to talk to him. So I looked on the policy too. They are supposed to inform me of the closure of the case first. They're supposed to inform me and the accused. I did not know the case was closed for months. He spoke with me. He spoke with the other ex who declined to share details. He called nobody else, and he talked to Dan, and he closed the case. And I found out the case was closed because Dan served me to dissolve the restraining order, and in his affidavit, it said that because the USAPL closed the case, this is funny, actually. Like, let's find some humor here. This is his logic. Because USAPL closed the case, I had no reason to fear him anymore. That was his logic. Because that makes fucking sense. Because our sport decided not to hold you accountable, you must not be scary. Okay, it make sense.
Which, you know, and I know this is a contentious point, but the USAPL doesn't really have any like legal jurisdiction to do anything. So like in the regard of, well, USAPL said everything's okay when they don't even have any precedents to do anything in the first place, then how is them sort of or Safe Sport clearing you? Like that doesn't make any sense.
So when it comes down to the situation, if USAPL even says something, basically, showing that favoritism one way or the other, without there actually being like a legal precedent, like him being arrested and so on and so forth, they can get in trouble. Who they're banking on is Safe Sport to actually make the declaration. Scott Gray's investigation was supposed to find for you. It's not the other way around. Safe Sport takes primacy here. They basically are the deciding factor. For them to do that is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like is this guy being bribed? Like what manner of negligence is this? It's insane.
I have questions. And like if I could share another anecdote, I don't know how much time we got, but there's just so much I could share. And I know like it's honestly there's a lot of interesting stuff, but and of course I completely lost my train of thought.
Scott Gray incidents.
Thank you. That's so vague. What were you just saying?
I was saying that is he on the take? Is he being paid by somebody to be this negligent?
So what I was going to say is I wonder about his own background. Is he a guy's guy? Does he have a colored past himself? And the reason I say that is, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was literally having the same thought, and not even. I wasn't necessarily thinking like, does he have a past in terms of like domestic violence accusations or charges or whatever, but just being that guy's guy, because I've had conversations. I mentioned this earlier in the conversation. Like I've had discussions about this whole situation with friends of mine, quote unquote friends of mine, who just were that typical guy's guy. It's like, well, I've never had a bad experience with Dan. He's such a nice guy. It's hard for me to, and like I can like get that to a point, but it's also like you need to use your critical thinking skills. Like put your critical thinking cap on and just try to understand both perspectives and the social dynamics and all this stuff, and at least open your mind up to the possibility that maybe he's not the nice guy that because you see him once every year at a powerlifting meet and he has a smile on his face. Like that's not really enough information to tell you what his personality is like behind closed doors, what he's really like. You know what I mean?
But also from a logical perspective, what does Brooke stand to benefit from this? Is she suing this guy for money? Or do they have business together? Is there any financial holdings between the both of them?
That's been another thing. That's been another thing that's always bothered me about people not believing your story, because you don't really have any incentive to bring this to light, and it hurts you more than it helps you. So like, I don't understand why everyone is so vehemently against even just opening their
Well,
minds to
because
your
people
perspective.
are idiots. That's why.
Well,
Fundamentally, they're absolute idiots.
Well,
That's what it comes down to.
I
I can
think it's I
share.
think it's I think it's probably more complex than they're idiots, but
I think
I could share context to that. So like I try to think like, okay, if I were in those shoes and I were saying those things, what would be the reason? Well, to be honest with you, like my first coach, not a good person. I was very vocal about that, right? So when you have somebody who's vocal about similar behaviors from men, like you would start to question, is it her? Um, the reason but I will say with that though,
that wasn't like the same
no,
thing.
no, not in the slightest. And even still, some of the people judging me most harshly were talking way more shit about that coach than I was before, even when I was working with him. So it's almost like, can you guys evaluate your own hypocrisy for a minute, please? Like
No,
I'm
absolutely not.
no, we but the reason I say that I wonder about Scott Gray's past is because an interesting anecdote, I am going to keep this name. There's no reason. But I will say this. I went on a few dates with somebody in the community. Um, he called me on the phone after I outed more details right after regionals and gave me a long speech. I call it a mansplain. It was very condescending. And it was like the things that came out of his mouth actually shocked me and I cried. Because it's somebody I like, we weren't dating like in a relationship, but like I liked him. We like had a good time together. I was stunned. But he said, he needs to distance himself from me because I am filled with resentment that's only going to hurt me. I'm playing the victim. I'm ruining Dan's life on purpose.
Can you sign up for frequent flyer miles for this?
But like those words came out of his mouth. So like and this person has a record of his own with a restraining order in his past. I will say that. So what I am finding and what I am observing about the people who are Dan apologists, they have the mentality of an abuser themselves. And that's important. Like for me to know who to stay away from. Like I actually like in my current love life sidebar, like I disclose this to people as a way to vet people because the way that
To
people,
kind of gauge their
yeah.
reaction.
And I've worked this out in my own therapy sessions. Like, hey, this is something heavy, right? Like I'm going back to court in June. So if I'm consistently dating somebody around that time, it is going to affect me, and I think they should know. So when I disclose that, I know who's safe to date and who's not immediately. I'll say that. But like, yeah, anyway, like you have to wonder, like anybody who's a Dan apologist at this point, like they're an abuser apologist and or they have the mentality of an abuser, in my opinion.
I've seen it, had that same experience when I say with the whole, not to get political, with the whole Trump situation. When I bring up the E. Jean Carroll case, and we show that basically, like it was through formality, whatever, technicality, that he wasn't charged with outright rape.
Yeah, because it wasn't a criminal court case.
Well,
That
but even then, the criminal court, that court case found him liable for sexual abuse. Why they didn't find him liable for rape is because up until January of 2024, rape in New York was purely PIV.
Yeah, but wasn't that also a defamation case in a
It
civil?
was.
It was a civil case.
Yes,
It
but
wasn't a
you
criminal case.
but they also find liability for certain actions. So it was to an extent of
I
criminal.
know, but
Yeah.
it's not being criminally convicted of
Yes.
the action of rape.
Yes, he's not
Right.
going to jail for
And
this.
that's the mental gymnastics that people use
I
to
was
try
about
and
to say that.
justify. Yeah, that's why that's all the only reason I wanted to make, not because I'm arguing
Yeah.
the point. It's just I wanted to make the clarification because that's why people think they can justify it in that way.
Sure.
Well,
It wasn't a criminal court case, whatever, but it was a court case, and it didn't happen once. It happened twice. On two different occasions, you had 9 different random people from all over the city who sat down together in court and unanimously found against him. These are people basically who were hand selected by both parties, like the defense and also the the other end. Name evades me right now. But they both sit down and they basically choose. Now, his lawyers are some of the best in the world, right? You imagine this man's a rich person. His location of operation is New York. He has a tremendous amount of power in New York. He's been there for decades. So he
Very
holds a whole lot
similar.
of sway here. And so despite all of that, despite having potentially favorable people towards him, sitting in those seats on both occasions. All 9 people found him culpable of this stuff. They found against him. And this is something which took place like in the 90s, right? And so, like, like her testimony was so compelling, these people sat down and said, there's no fucking doubt about it. He fucking did this shit. Now, because New York law at the time only allowed for rape to be considered like PIV, but because of that formality, he wasn't liable for it, despite the fact that he had anally raped her. And you read the document itself, he was inside of her. And if it wasn't rape, he was like whatchamacallit in the other place there. But you see this and you present this evidence and you show it to people how clear it is, how obvious it is. And still it's like, but this, but it was politicized, but blah, blah, blah. And like all these excuses. All these are fucking stupid ass excuses over here. You had Hunter
Always.
Biden, who was tried in a kangaroo court for having done drugs while owning a weapon. And this is something which many people on the right like enjoy doing, getting high, fucking owning guns and shit like that. And now they fucking demonize the guy for it. Meantime, we have this guy actually raping women and whatnot out there. So I asked these people, what would you do? What would you call it if that happened to your mom? What would you call it if that happened to your sister? If that happened to your daughter? What the fuck would you call it?
Yeah, would you be making excuses then?
They go quiet. They go quiet. You see shit
Nobody-
happening. And now those people who ask me those questions,
They go quiet, but they don't change their stance. They just shut the fuck up. Yeah.
Basically, it's like,
Which is even, it's
double
like,
figure.
that's even worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the trend is those people who are showing up in his defense are people with very, very nasty histories. People who have done shit
Always.
like this.
I mean, even if they don't have a nasty history, they likely have the propensity for it, or they're sympathizing with that behavior, which is just as disgusting, in my opinion.
Now,
speaking of, oh, sorry.
One of his most staunch defenders is I don't know if you guys are aware of Zebulon Drake. He was exposed by Goob a couple years back for dick pics and aggressive texts and so on and so forth. Just tell me in my DMs about this. Honestly, it's interesting to see the shit he has to say here. Just I want to see an exercise in, I'm saying curiosity. Let's see what depths this person's willing to fucking plumb himself down to at every single time.
But I did want to share something. Speaking of mental gymnastics, so anyway, I'm hearing that somebody has been sneaking him in behind the owner's back. That's not my issue to bring to the owner. It's not my business. It's not my role, not my job. But I'm hearing that that's happening. Anyway, I'm also hearing that there are women at that gym conversing openly about how what I went through is not real abuse because he didn't punch me.
I saw that on your story. I thought that was wild.
And I'm known to be problematic. I'm overreacting, and it's not that serious. So I'm going to say
pick me, please.
I'm good.
Me.
Yes. So I have 3 things on this. One is, statistically speaking, 1 in 4 women in their life will be abused. When it happens to one of them, my DMs are open and I'll help you leave. Thanks, though, for the hate. It's a lack of education. It's a hatred of other women. And frankly, I think they have a crush on him. And I say they should go date him, see if he's available. Find out. But anyway, like the behavior of the women has just been wild. But actually, by definition, though, barricading someone in their bedroom and blocking their exit is physical abuse. So I would say go educate yourselves if you're going to talk to me and say that I didn't go through what I went through. But anyway, we were on the timeline, weren't we?
We were.
So all the safe sport blew over. I found out in the court affidavit that the case was closed. You might say I crashed out again in private at that point because I was like, I had to go back to court, and like he was using this. First of all, I think it's a form of abuse to continue to pull your victim back to court. First of all, it's incredibly psychologically taxing. I had to take another day off work. We could talk about. I tallied up what it cost me last year.
I can only imagine.
Time off of work, lawyer fees, time off of work, all of that. $10,000.
Can you sue his ass for harassment here?
I'm considering it. If he tries to,
then you have to go back to court and spend more money.
That's the thing. I don't want. I want to limit my appearances in court with him. I don't want to be around him. But anyway, that was all closed. This is around July. I found out. Nationals is in September. I arrive at the gate. So like I leaked a part of the audio like a week before Nationals, and I will fully own did not ask for permission. Wish I hadn't, but I truly felt backed into a wall and like I had to share something. So I shared like 2 3-second clips. I shared one on my story A lot
I
of
remember
people
that.
from a lot of people from a lot of states were viewing that. And I was like, okay, now you know the fucking business because you know I'm not lying. Every single person that has said, oh, I've had great interactions with Dan at the gym knows that's his fucking voice, right? He has a distinct voice. That is him. So I shared it on the story and I made a reel, right, of me deadlifting in that gym with him in the background and saying, hey, USAPL is choosing to bring my abuser and myself to nationals. How do y'all feel about that? And I just let it lie. Because again, I'm competing. So I'm balancing my stress around this with like, I'm going through all of this trauma and having to be in his space. I better make it worthwhile for myself and show the fuck up too. Or else for what? Like, I'd rather just stay home. So I arrive at the gate at Delta, and guess who's on my flight to
My
nationals?
God.
With his new girlfriend, which I think is hilarious because I don't think that it's a good idea to get into a new relationship like a month after you're forcefully removed from your ex-girlfriend's house. That's wild to me. I have information on that too. That somebody can
Is that girl a powerlifter? Like, is she in the
no.
community? Okay.
I have no idea who she is. She actually was stalking my socials very, very heavily. And like I knew she
Not
was affiliated.
surprising.
Yeah, no, because I had him blocked on everything. So I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay. I was like, okay, new woman in my story views. I check on my burner account because I don't have him blocked there. I'm like, oh, we have a mutual. She must be spying on me for Dan. So I'm like, I'm like, let me sit on this and play dumb. I sent her a follow request and she immediately blocked me. I was like, okay, she's guilty. I then see her stalking me on TikTok, and TikTok tells you who looks at your profile.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I decided I'm going to send her a message and play dumb again and just say, hey, do I know you? You look familiar. She blocked me again. And then
Oh,
and then I see her at the gate with him and I fill in the pieces. I'm like, okay, new girlfriend. Seems really healthy of both of them, but whatever. I had bigger issues to deal with on this flight. So one thing I will share with you guys too, funny little details. I am very particular about my airline and my level of seating comfort. I intentionally, when I booked economy, like the bare bones, because I kind of like looked ahead. I lived with this guy. I know how he works. He's very subtle. I said he's going to book Comfort Plus. And I was thinking like, God forbid we're on the same flight. He's going to book Delta Comfort Plus because he knows that's what I prefer. So I booked economy and wouldn't you know, he's in Comfort Plus with his new girlfriend. So I get seated.
What a
I had to go
fucking
to the desk.
weirdo. Dude,
Yes,
he is fucking
it's
weird. What a
fucking
creep.
creepy. It's creepy. It's very creepy. Leave me alone. Stop putting yourself in my space, like with enough plausible deniability, because I see what's going on. I don't care if anyone else does. I know exactly what you're doing. And guess what? I'm 3 steps ahead of you because I know how your mind works. I lived with you. But I get immediately, I had to go to the desk and say, hey, excuse me, that gentleman over there, I have a restraining order. Can you please ensure that we're at least 10 rows apart? So they did. They were super nice, but that was really uncomfortable to have to talk about with strangers. I get seated and text my lawyer immediately. I'm like, hey, just so you know, this is going on in case he tries to use it in court. At this time, I was very quiet about having a lawyer because I knew that he has the audacity to not hire one because he thinks he's in the right. No, when I had to show up for the hearing for him to remove it, it was over in 5 minutes. I'm so glad I lawyered up for that. But anyway, I'm on the same flight as him. I'm like, fucking thanks, USAPL. Thank you for the repeated continuous trauma, just trying to compete as an athlete. I don't know what else to say. Like, I showed up, I got to my hotel. I was alone for a day. The person I was with at the time was coming in the next day. So I was solo for a day. I'm walking the street to the venue, and guess who passes me? None other than the president of USAPL. I know who the fuck he is, and he knows who the fuck I am. He looked at me and gave me an awkward look and passed by. Another detail, like before we got there, I sent a very long email to the national office, and I included state chairs from Mass, Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, and some other scattered states that I thought might want to know. Zero response. Zero. I attached the audio, I attached the photos, I attached a copy of the restraining order. They asked me for a copy of the restraining order. That's the only back and forth I had with them. And they gave me a canned response that we care about your safety. No, the fuck you don't. You care about monetizing this and you're a national champion. Let's be real. Because all of your other competition in the 90 key class left. He's your only one left. There's a few, but he won. You know what I mean? And he won because the big ones, the big the heavy hitters in the 90s are all PLA now. Let's be honest. He would not have even placed had they not left. So yeah, like I felt at this point, again, me being seen as problematic, fine. I don't care. Let me be a problem. I felt that I took every proper channel possible before I went wild after nationals. I tried every single avenue known to me.
You
to
did,
try to
and
motivate.
honestly, if I was in a situation, or if one of my loved ones was in a situation, I would do the exact same thing. I want to say a little bit more aggressively, to be honest. You know, there would be a lot more fallout there. So if anybody says you were being unreasonable, this whatnot, that's just not true. I mean, you did everything you did. You could. You went through. You spoke to him first off, tried to not escalate it. You spoke to PD, tried to not escalate it. You spoke to USAPL, who directed you to Safe Sport, and then Safe Sport made their bullshit finding talking about how it's in the USAPL score. When clearly, it's not. That's not how these things fucking work. Safe Sport is the end of that road. And then you're speaking to USAPL again, saying, by the way, this is what's taking place over here. Like, pay attention to this, pay attention to this. And then all this is taking place. Now, something else the audience may not be aware of over here. And USAPL has its reasons for doing things. I understand, like, you have the legalities and that kind of shit you have to consider as a business. And with being as big a business as that, there's a whole lot of, like, I'm going to say, you know, like a potential fallout for making I'm going to say, an aggressive stance about something as complicated as this situation is. Though to me, it's clear as white, like as like, you know, like black and white, you know. But now all this is taking place, and they're putting up a post of the potential lifters for their primetime sessions at these meets. And while all this is happening, they did so, and they had Dan Howell there on one of their like USAPL page posts, and that bothered me quite a bit. I reached out to them. They said, "What else can we do? You know, if we're going to put one person 90 kg, we have to put all of them up there. If they're making all the posts about the other classes, we have to do it for this class." I'm like, "But there has to be some other way around this. You know, you don't want to have this person's face emblazoned on your, like, you know, social media page." So I don't know what's taking place there. I legitimately don't know. You know, it comes up to legalese and that kind of shit. This is beyond my scope. But there has to be a better fucking way than to have somebody who's actually an abuser being like emblazoned like that, being put what's called on a pedestal, a little podium out over there, and to compete alongside somebody who it's known he abused. You have the evidence there. It's indisputable. This person is a fucking piece of shit. You know, he doesn't.
Yeah, good.
You know, I'm sorry. So I don't know. Like, I thought of different ways. I thought maybe the NFL system would apply, but unfortunately, like, he's not an employee of the USAPL, and so he wouldn't be like a subject to that shit. And in the NFL, you know, if you're a quarterback, linebacker, whatever the case happens to be, you're technically an employee of the NFL, and so they can terminate you at will for doing shit like this. It's not the case with USAPL apparently, but they need to figure some shit out. This cannot happen again.
There needs to be a policy. Not only that, I do want to add that not only was he abusive toward me, but he abused a USA powerlifter, registered lifter in Massachusetts before me. This is a pattern. I don't understand what else I can say about that. Like, and also I will say, like, imagine being me opening the app and having a face of your abuser pushed to the top
that was
of your
my first
timeline.
thought. That was my first fucking thought.
Multiple times. I was like, I can't even navigate in this sport at all, virtually, physically, without him in my face on the flight. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? I paid too. I've been in this sport just as long as him. Sorry that I don't have time to volunteer, because I guess the local community, you're a great person if you volunteer to meet. That seems to be the standard. I don't understand that, because what?
That absolves you of all your wrongdoings in life.
It really does seem to be that way.
If you go spot and load at a meet, you've done nothing wrong ever. You're perfect.
And also, I do want to add too, and again, not needing to name names and call out people, but imagine also being me in that relationship with him, watching your state chair praise him relentlessly on his Instagram stories. One of them literally saying Dan Howell is the best person that happened to powerlifting. Meanwhile, you're me planning an exit plan with 8 knives in your home and a safe full of firearms in your closet, knowing that he has the capability to kill you, knowing that secret, and watching your state officials praise him.
That's one thing that really got to me was, you know, I understand the USAPL as an organization maybe doesn't have the policies in place to really do anything from the top, but, you know, the states as themselves, right, the state chairs, the people, the meet directors, whatever, they could choose to not allow him to participate, right, in the community, but they chose to continue to allow him to come and participate.
Well, I'm not sure about that, to be honest, but I do know one thing. If you're
I'm sure about that.
Well, one thing.
Because I posted about it on my story, or I did post about it on my story several times.
Well, I'm not discounting it, but I'm continuing this. So I'm not sure about it. You sound like you know about this, but I do know one thing. If you own a gym, you can most definitely tell a person who and who cannot enter your premises.
Hey, guess what? The only time anyone ever publicly stated or banned him was when it was costly to them not to. Everybody, single person in power in this whole situation from then until today is self-interested.
They
only.
waited till the last
Till they
possible
had to.
moment, till they absolutely had to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And multiple people at very high levels in PLA took note of that, by the way.
Hoping they do the right thing. From what I've seen, first off, like there's no excuse whatever for you to continue with USAPL. Like I know the difference between USAPL and IPF, and it's the very nasty history of the IPF and PLA. I'm very well aware of it. I'm sure, like you've heard in the stories and that kind of stuff, and the podcast lately and whatnot. I'm very aware of it. But if I were in your shoes, I would still be leaving USAPL. You cannot be in the same space as somebody else who've dealt with this. So, like 100%, your experience is warranted. This is the rational decision. This is a rational choice. You stick with USAPL, that'd be worrisome. You start to consider like what's actually taking place.
I
over
would
here.
love to be re-traumatized every few months by being in the same room as my abuser. I'm all set with that. That's why, like, when somebody asked me that, I felt it was a valid question, but like they have to keep in mind, I'm going to steer clear of personal trauma.
Of course. Of
I
course.
don't seek that out. I'm picking the evil that's less harmful to me as an individual.
Yes.
And that's just what it is.
And tying back into this, I genuinely hope, because like people have this idea that I'm really coming at the PLA and IPF just for shits and giggles and whatnot, that I have some favoritism to USAPL. We're doing this episode.
Yeah.
Our whole spiel is putting things out, I guess, and trying to do right by everybody. I hope that IPF, by Powerlifting and Powerlifting America by extension, do the right thing in these instances, and that they change the way that the rules are and whatnot. In situations like yours and whatnot, that extra steps are taking place. Taking place at the very least. If you, as the victim, sign up for a meet, let's just say you can't kick them out of all meets. Whatnot. What you can do is, if you, as a victim, sign up at a meet, this person is barred from signing up to that same meet.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that
really
tough.
quite simple. It's quite simple.
You can just, like you have a clause there that says just in the no drama clause, call it, right? This person signed up first and whatnot. This person basically is a person who's claiming they have issues with you and so on and so forth, and seems to be pretty credible. We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt of here. There are other meets you can compete at whatnot, but you cannot compete at this meet. Something of that nature. I'm hoping that PLA does it. I've seen their history. Most recent, what's taking place with Gaston Parage and whatnot, that is extremely alarming. Like hearing rape accusations against the fucking, a president, like what you call it, an actual president federation. That's something I don't think it's ever happened before. This is a new precedent.
To be fair, though, let's make it clear that was the head of the IPF, not Powerlifting America.
True, but the people in Powerlifting America, are aware of this.
I'm aware, and I am, I have my own issues with the IPF and Powerlifting America. I do obviously bias a little more towards USAPL, but this is also an issue that requires some attention and some policy changes or policy additions or whatever the case is. But if something like this were to happen again in the future, it needs to be handled appropriately.
So I will say, like, going back to state, chairs having the ability to do things. I have a friend who was a state chair who reached out to the national office asking, hey, I'd like to ban Dan Howell from the state's events. They responded to her, and they were not truthful with her about the communication relayed to me. I have the email on my phone. She sent it to me.
Interesting.
They basically said, hey, you're not allowed to do that. The Safe Sport case was closed, and that was communicated to Miss Reynolds. No, the fuck it wasn't. Not by USAPL, not by Safe Sport. But notice the word, and this is where you got to look at the subtleties and read between the lines. They didn't outright lie. It was communicated to me through Middlesex District Court when I had to go there and read his affidavit. Notice that word choice, right? It's not an outright lie, but it's a lie.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting.
You were not notified through the proper channels. It was secondhand.
You happened to find out as opposed to being told the way you're supposed to be told.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just this entire situation is absolutely just it's bonkers. Frankly, there needs to be declarations by this federation, by USAPL, to talk about the situation to whatever extent that they can talk about it, and to show that, like, I want to say that there's steps to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. Domestic violence is a very common phenomenon. It happens a lot. I can only imagine how many other people in this federation are experiencing it to some extent and whatnot, having to deal with their abusers on a regular basis. Those people, if they're experiencing that, as a let's just say from a business perspective here, do you think that person will continue in the federation? Now, seeing that their abusers lifting alongside of them? Absolutely not. They'll do everything they can to avoid them because there are no assurances from the USAPL that anything will be done to protect them in these instances when the situations are as murky as they are. I think it behooves them as an organization, and this is not meant to disparage them in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's important for them to say that, hey, listen, shit's complicated, but we have your back in some way, shape, or form. I think it's an important thing to tell people that you care about them, that it is a safe space for people who, are vulnerable to partake in and whatnot, and they will be assured these protections. We all have
Yeah.
moms and wives and girlfriends and daughters and that kind of stuff, whatnot. We need to extend to every woman and to every person the same decencies we'd like to extend to our own people. The golden rule in application.
I mean, I add too that I'm aware of a few of the women in the local community who have experienced similar by people who are still in the Fed as well. The thing that I think people need to understand is that people come to me with these things when if I share something vague on a story, I'm being vague very intentionally. Everything I post is very intentional. Like, people want to believe that I'm highly reactive and like just prone to go off. I think things through before I speak. There's a lot going on locally with certain people that just
Especially at this
not
point
happy
too, with
with.
everything you've already been through and experienced, and I think that would sort of lend to you being a little bit more careful and intentional in what you post, and
Yeah.
not just being reactive. So
I have learned a lot.
that's
A
what I'm
lot.
saying.
I
Yeah.
have learned to be very protective of myself and very careful with my words. Just, I think like one thing, if I could add, somebody asked me that I think is really helpful, like, how did I manage to stay in the community through all of this? Like, what did I do to keep myself supported? Honestly, I don't have a full answer because I still don't feel fully supported. Like, I'm ready to just be done with this whole thing forever, to be honest with you guys. I don't want to breathe the same air as people who are just calling me a liar about this at this point after everything I've
I
shared.
don't blame.
I don't want to. I'm turned off. Yeah.
Absolutely do not blame you. That said, they want that. They
I know.
100% want that.
I know.
I'm not putting this out there like, in other words, like, you should spite them and say fuck them and that kind of stuff. But it comes
But they
down to the
do.
fact, but they do. They really do. And so I think from this aspect over here, it's like, like, keep doing what you love doing, despite the fact that sometimes things can be a little bit difficult to deal with whatnot. That's how I would operate whatnot. I do understand you want to distance yourself, and legit, you have every reason to do so, but they want that. This is their aim. This is something that they're driving towards. So that said, what is something you think that the USAPL and PLA, or just USAPL in general, could do to help out the situation? What is like an action plan? What, like, like a few steps that they could do as an organization to make you and others feel safe in that federation?
I would say fire Scott Gray and assign a new investigator. Um,
Fully agreed.
re-educate everybody on the safe sport policies, which are right in front of you on the website. I understand there's now like an added layer of required training through safe sport, thanks to somebody we know. There's people working in the background to change policy. I would say there needs to be some type of working group, like whether, I don't know what you would call it, maybe the no drama committee, right? Where like where
NDC.
there's where there's a barrier to entry, or if it has something related to something criminal like this, there's an application process, there's a review
Yes.
process, and there's clear communication back to both parties, like unbiased. I think that would be a great start. The biggest fumble, in my opinion, as somebody who's a leader and has a career in management, leadership is not staying quiet when things get uncomfortable. Leadership is leaning in and communicating well. Whether or not you believe or agree with the person, good leadership is not silencing and shutting down comments on a post. That is fucking cowardice. That's avoiding a problem, and it's a worse look on USAPL than it would have been otherwise. That's leadership one-on-one. I learned, 101. I learned that when I was 25 working at Starbucks. The worst thing you can do as a leader is silence your people and not respond. But yeah, I think the biggest piece and the biggest source of hurt
It's
for
kind of
me.
ironic because Starbucks does just that, but I
Yeah,
get
I'm
Yeah, I
it.
know they
sorry.
do.
Okay. Worst example ever. But what I'm saying is
No,
that
I
was
know
where
what you're saying.
got-
I just like couldn't help but bring that up. Sorry.
that was where I got my start in management. And as I like to say, that's where I made all of my mistakes managing people. I was a horrible manager when I started. Most of us are. But the biggest source of hurt for me, if I'm being completely honest, is the utter silence from the local officials. Like nobody even checking in and saying, "Are you fucking okay?" Like
Yeah.
nobody at all.
They probably
So I
checked
would
in on
say,
Dan.
yeah, probably.
Are you
Yeah.
okay?
Hey, are you okay? You must be going through a lot.
All
What
these
about
accusations here. And
Yeah.
did you hear that video? Did you hear that audio? Oh my goodness, it makes you look so bad. Oh man,
yeah,
That's the vibes it gives off though. The
yeah,
whole
it really does.
situation, you know, it just stinks of
It's
that.
so disgusting. Holy fucking
yeah.
shit.
There's a lot of people who feel very sorry for him, and they're not my people.
Yeah. That's fair.
But as we
They're not
know,
my they're not my people either, so.
as we
Makes the
know,
three of
after
us.
nationals, yeah, after nationals, there was somebody who was pressing me pretty hard to air out the evidence. I have a lot of opinions on that, and I think that was mostly self-interest with a ton of hindsight.
Interesting.
I've removed that person from my following, not because I have a personal issue, but because I just don't want to see them. And like I like just to say, if anyone's listening here, like full disclosure, I've removed all local coaches, I've removed all local officials. I just don't want to see your content, man. Like it's not necessarily personal and petty, but like I just don't want to subject myself to content from people that I feel should have done better. Like it is what it is. But there's a person who pressed me very hard through this whole year to air the evidence because certain people in positions of power in the sport were discrediting me behind the scenes. Yeah. I'm not going to say that name again, but I stand by what I said. I stand by what I said in September.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I said what I said, and I would say it louder if I could go back. I would not redact that. But I finally got permission from the person to air the audio. So as you guys know, I released a series of reels. It got worse and worse over time, and people finally fucking got it. But what I will say is, people who shared it, I told you about this in February, and you're sharing it in September.
Yeah. Like it's like on one hand, it's nice to see people come around and see the light, if you will. But on the
Yeah.
other hand, it's like this is what it came to. Like you had to, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like not having that open mind for both perspectives and hearing everybody out and like kind of thinking critically about it and coming to your own conclusion. It's just you sort of bias yourself towards one or the other, and
Yeah, I
just-
mean, I'm of two minds. I'm grateful, but it's like, why did I have to take it this far?
Yep.
I didn't want to. I did not want to.
That's been my experience in these situations as well. Shit, from fucking Joe Sullivan and Kate Haddad, fucking to Nico Flores, and like like all the shit that's taking place, whatnot. Like even the IPF situation right now, which is currently brewing, and it has yet to like really open up entirely. There's a whole lot more going on here. And it's always basically like, you'll see people basically say, no, that can't be serious. That's not that bad, and so on and so forth. And they'll hem and they'll haul and they'll do everything they can to brush on the rug. So this is I'm relating this because basically people think it's a you problem, but this is actually a them problem. This happens every time something controversial is brought to light. You have these fucking knuckle draggers over there who come to the defense of these fucking monsters despite the evidence which is presented. And then you move on to the next level and they'll goal shift again. And they'll goal shift again and again and again until it becomes cool to come after them. The
Yep.
Flores
Yep.
situation, you can actually see the podcast itself when we released it in August 2nd. We had a large uptick in views and listens. And then when when the bigger players in powerlifting, credit goes to Deadlift Pinoy,
Yeah.
the bulldozer, for putting it out there with that. But up until that moment, up until he did that, I had people coming at me left, right, and center behind the scenes and that kind of shit. Call me fucking rabble rouser, call me shit talker, that kind of stuff. Jeff had won a court case. All that shit took place. So all this stuff is fucking. It's concrete. It's put down there.
And then all of a sudden, it's cool to
hate
shit
him.
shit on Nico. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, you're right. I was right the entire fucking time, and you fucking knew it. Nothing changed except for the fact that somebody who you clout sucking is talking about it finally. This is who we're dealing with. This is the problem. We're dealing with fucking like absolute idiots out of there who don't give two shits about fucking right or wrong. It comes down to what's cool. And as a society, this is our current problem right now.
Something I want to bring light to as well. I don't personally feel like, because I'm hearing that certain meet directors are letting him volunteer at meets again. That is very upsetting. But you know what? That just shows me who I'm never going to speak with again and just not going to associate with. But I don't think that he should be in a position of coaching. I think that that's
I
because what
agree.
I will say is when I was with him before things got, I know, hold Mark, because I got something for you.
Well, I got something. I mean, not that it's. Go ahead though.
When I was with him before things got really bad, there was one athlete who left his roster and was absolutely ostracized by the rest of them, with Dan egging them on in the background because I was sitting next to him on the couch when these conversations were taking place. He would make comments like, and I know another coach in the space made a comment about him not locking out his deadlifts, which is absolutely true at the time. I told him every day, if you don't lock out your sumo, you don't know if your positioning is good because you should not be struggling to lock out your sumo. This is your best lift. Get it together because I love you and I want you to do well. That was like an ongoing conversation. Somebody made a comment about it in passing. He has like a folder of screenshots. Like he's an incredibly paranoid person. He takes
Don't make a
screenshots of all
face,
this.
Yuli. You
No, I'm
got that
serious.
too.
No, I do. I
I
do,
know.
but for
I
different
think
reasons.
we all do.
But for different reasons. I'm listening to something this petty. Like if somebody
I
shit
just
talks my lift,
listen.
you know.
I have a folder now too, but I've been through shit. But like he would screenshot these things, and he would literally say things to me verbatim, like "Don't worry, my kids are on it." So like his whole roster at the time would mass bully people on his behalf, and they did it to
Oh
me. They did it
fuck.
to me.
That's
They did it to me.
interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this is why you might have seen on random posts where I saw some kids on his roster talking shit. I would literally go in and call them out and say, "It's funny you have nothing to say about Dan though." And like it would egg them on and they ripped me apart. Guess who was in my DMs apologizing in September?
Interesting.
But I don't know if it's real apologies. Who
Yeah.
cares? Who even
Just trying to
cares?
save face, maybe.
Yeah. But it's like he would weaponize his roster. And here's what's dangerous about people like him and people like the first coach I was with. They hold on to the young and impressionable because they haven't lived enough life to be able to look at things and be like, this ain't right. Something's off here.
Yeah.
Like, so like it's, in my opinion, it's dangerous for him to be able to coach because he has in the past weaponized his roster that way to bully other people.
To summarize it, he should not be in any position of power where he
No.
holds the power dynamic over anybody else
Yeah.
and can use it, I guess, like for his benefit because we've seen
Yeah.
what's happened. It's wild, man. You know, these people need to do better. They need to do better. Grow a fucking spine. You do not need him there. Like if it comes down to like fucking like you know I don't know like some gym like fucking allowing him to have access to it who has no history with.
Like the gym that he's been recently training at that has a very, very progressive and powerful mission statement behind them, which I found very interesting that that place would allow him in that gym.
You see that a lot.
I was not happy when I saw that.
I was knowing the story behind that gym and how, you know, maybe inclusive is not the right word here, but just progressive in nature and how they, you know, they're trying to make a safe space for certain groups of people to have a place to train. And then it's very, very contradictory.
So I saw that happen at Game Day Barbell as well. And the Nico Flores situation is one thing. They had another whole other big problem, way bigger than the Nico Flores situation brewing behind the scenes. This is something which, like, you know, like I haven't opened up about, something I'd like not to open up about until the people who were affected by this want to open up about this. But they had some huge problems with that. And what they're displaying outwardly is very different from what took place behind the scenes. It's a common theme. You see it, I see it out there. And you see it in local gyms out over here too, by the way. You know, like here in New York and shit like that. People talk, oh, this, you know, we care about you, so on and so forth. The shit happens behind the scenes, brushed right under the fucking rug. You know, cowardice. I'm sorry, Brooke. You were.
No, I was just saying I was floored when I saw that post. A few people sent it to me. And also, it's a very bad look for that community. It's a very bad look. I think it's a beautiful initiative and it deserves its space. I question that decision.
It comes down to lack of character fundamentally, I think. You know, people are very big on like talking about what they believe in, like, you know, like the things I guess they like to support and so forth. And behind the scenes, you see the shit they actually fucking do, the people they support. But like, you know, the whole Joe Sullivan situation, like a lot of the people who knew the story behind him, and I showed them some B-cut shit, which never made it out to the fucking stories. Some very disturbing shit here, and they're aware of this. And they chose to support him over myself, you know? And they're very outwardly progressive, and they talk about how they care about people, and they care about lifters, and they're not into the drama and all that kind of shit. And lo and behold, you see what they're actually about. You know,
Every time Time I hear someone say, I don't want the drama, I'm like,
Yep.
you're a problem.
Yep. Red flag.
Yeah.
Immediately. What do you call that? That's a missing step phenomenon.
I don't know.
Where
I don't
basically you
know.
have a certain problem. So what it is, let me see if I can actually bring it up. 1 second.
Ely's fact checking himself here.
An educational moment for us all.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can put this up here. Share. Screen. All right, so we're looking at the missing stair. Is a metaphor for a person within a social group organization whom many people know is untrustworthy or otherwise has to be managed, but around whom the group chooses to by discreetly warning newcomers of their behavior rather than address the person and their behavior openly. The missing stair in the metaphor refers to a dangerous structural fault, such as the missing step in the staircase, a fault that people may become used to and quietly accepting of, that is not openly signposted or fixed, and that newcomers to a group or organization are warned about discreetly. You see this happening a whole lot.
Yeah. It shouldn't be like that. I mean, if you think about it, sex offenders are required to register. So like why is there no similar system for these federations? I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know. I don't know. This all needs a whole lot of revamping, needs a whole lot of work. Your experience alone should be something to give people pause and to say, "Holy shit, something's not right here." Or people who are in leadership say, "Damn, we need to do something better here." There needs to be something else we could do to prevent this from taking place, because whatever happened there, it could be worse. With
Yeah.
domestic violence situations, particularly people, I guess, who've choked people in the past and whatnot. The chance of somebody being, outright killed by that individual is like fucking orders of magnitude up, like and this person being in which we call it in a very, I want to say, a very dynamic, like location alongside you and whatnot, with like like with like barbells and fucking plates and that kind of shit. Maybe things end up in a worse situation you expected. Do we need to have that black swan moment to finally say, "Oh shit, somebody fucking got killed at our meet. Maybe we need to do something to prevent this in the future"? Is that what needs to fucking happen? Legitimately, it's pushing us into that direction. There needs to be some kind of like common sense clause to prevent this from happening, because at some point in time, and I don't want it to happen, but it will happen.
He will do it again. I can tell you this. And the reason I know is that,
Narcissist way.
yes, and I know this term is overused, but my therapist said it. I'm well versed in it. And when I was with him, I started picking up on behavioral patterns with him. He would be very quiet and moody with me. Then as soon as we would enter the door, anything powerlifting related, guess who's the biggest energy in the room? The reason why I believe he always offers to spot people at the gym is because he's in their videos and he gets the attention. I noticed a lot of very subtle behavioral tendencies of his that screamed, I'm here for the attention and the ego stroke. Yeah, and again, like I said, this is the textbook profile of an abuser, somebody who's very charismatic, goes above and beyond for the community. This is what happens. And then, when you speak up, you're defenseless and you're ostracized. But yeah, I believe that's why he cheated, because he cheated. I caught him at the 3-month mark. God knows what was going on before that. I should have left. And that's where I wanted to talk about like my healing process too, and like where I would do things different and how I'm different now. Cause it's been almost 2 years. I'm in a much better place, healthier, approaching dating very differently. And I'm very grateful for the growth in that. But, when he cheated, it was during a time that work was picking up for me and I couldn't always, validate him as much. And he had even said to me, and like, I felt like I was doing a lot for him. So it was very confusing. And that's when I realized he's a bottomless pit of like needing attention and validation.
Age 5 clinger.
Just in different ways. He is a high anxiety person. I will say that came out in a lot of ways. But yeah, man, I don't know. People be crazy.
That's true. It's just wild. I don't know. I mean, I'm quite often called an asshole and shit like that from coming at people like this and whatnot. But I like to think that if and when confronted, I guess, with my own problems and so forth, I take ownership. I am I'm gonna say quite a crazy person. Like I'm very aggressive in the way I do things and whatnot. But I do admit faults, I guess, when it's there. I apologize, so on and so forth. You just don't see this happen with these other guys. These other individuals, and whatnot. There's no ownership here whatsoever. There's no like, I can get better from this, and there's no aspiring to get better. There's no improvement. And you see the same behaviors over and over and over again. Joe Sullivan has never fucking changed. Diego Flores is right back to fucking posting like it never fucking happened. You see this all across the board. I want to say out of all of them, like we've talked about in the past and whatnot, the only person who may potentially be showing some kind of change is maybe Joe Stanek. See, we'll see what happens.
I was really proud to see that Joe dropped him, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't talk to him, obviously.
Yeah, he's I've had some conversation with him in the past and whatnot, like recent. He's trying to make amends. That's what he's saying outwardly. I hope he does. Like legitimately. I mean, none of us are fucking perfect. Every single last one of us has made fucking mistakes in our fucking lives. I've been arrested. I've been in fights. I've been a douchebag a large portion of my fucking life. To the extent I still am a douchebag right now, but I work on getting better. And I think we
Yeah.
need to extend it to everybody out there. And I'm hoping that Dan actually takes ownership of this and becomes a better person. But I just don't see it happening.
I've been in court 3 times with him, and the lies continue and the denial continues. That's what people don't understand. Like, I'm not willing to talk about the details of the courtroom, but there's a reason he doesn't bring anyone aside from his brother every time. I think because he doesn't want people to hear that he's still denying everything. I have no idea what he's saying, but what I can tell you is that the narrative brought to me, overheard by those women, is exactly his narrative. So somehow it's being parroted out there. But to this day, to the last court appearance, he denies everything and maintains that I've overreacted. And that's fine. I have no interest in convincing people otherwise. I'm over it.
It's just fucking wild, dude. Like, holy fucking shit. Like, the entire case is out there. Well, now hopefully, this podcast provides a little, I want to say a little location, a landmark for people to refer to whenever they think about, like, the Dan Howell and the shit he's done in the past. And what could better be done to prevent this stuff like this happening in the future, and the failings of many people when it came to the situation.
I think, like, if there's a message I can convey to other people in the sport, it would be that I'm somebody who may come off harsh sometimes, just like you. I can come off like an asshole.
Abrasive.
Yeah. I prefer direct, but yes. Um, Anybody who's ever come to me to clear the air on something, we've had a perfectly civil conversation, and I admit when I'm wrong. Like you said, none of us are perfect, and the tough part about coming out as a victim is that you have this understanding that you're all of a sudden put on trial for every single one of your little trivial faults as the victim, and that's
Always. I've seen
exactly what has
over and over
happened.
again. Bro, it's insane.
But that's something I'm at peace with now, but like I just want to put out there for other people, just like find ways to vet who's for you if you're going through something. Like, I'm grateful that I had Soph, and I'm grateful that you guys picked this up. Like, you guys have been a part of my support system. I had my therapist. I had my best friends who the whole way through were like, please leave him. Please fucking leave him. He's trash. Like, I don't like, he's abusive. My therapist, by the way, and they don't typically do this unless they understand that you won't then drop them as a professional. My therapist looked me in the eyes and said, you're in an abusive relationship and you need to leave. And like, I picked up what she was putting down, and the reason I left is because for me, accountability is so big. So this is why I tell people things like I share my weight cut journey, because I know if I don't share it, I'm not going to stick to it. That's just how I operate. So like, I told her, okay, I have a plan. I will be out by Monday. I'll let you know when I'm out. And I did it. I told one of my best friends, I'm leaving him, and I did it. So like, if anyone's in their situation, like, first of all, my DMs are open. I'm happy to help you leave, share what helped me, find your people, and don't let somebody who hurt you take away something you love. Like you said, I'm taking a break now, but I don't plan on letting him be the reason I stop. And it is what it is. You have to just find your way to continue living your life and not let the person who hurt you compound the hurt and alter your life path. That's not what we want. You should be able to live your life and do what you love. You just have to find your niche when things like this happen.
Very well said. Very well said. Keep fighting, keep your head up and whatnot. To both you and also to anybody listening right now who's going through similar situations. The road is a fucking hard one and whatnot, but there are people out there who will help. And you can't let people rob you of your confidence. You can't let people rob you of your joy. You gotta keep at it. Um, Mark.
You're a very strong person for seeing this through, and like sticking with, even though you're kind of taking a break from powerlifting, like you're still lifting, you still plan to compete in the future, and you didn't let this situation you didn't turn away and run away. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like, I don't want to say most people would, but I feel like that it would be the easier route to take, is just, I'm just gonna quit powerlifting altogether. I'm gonna leave the community just so I don't ever have to see any of these people again. And I just think you're really strong for, staying and saying, no, this is my fucking space too. Even though it's
Fully agreed.
like, it's tough to navigate, especially with him still in the community, but like, you're still in that position where you're like, no, fuck that. Like, you're not robbing for me, what I love to do. I'm still going to do what I do. And you're going to figure it out. So I think that's great.
Yeah. I guess on that note, if anyone ever wants their self-esteem tested, I will say, like, coming out of this, I feel stronger than I did before, in all honesty. Like, I am very clear on who I am. I have had to really look at my flaws and understand why certain people didn't believe me. I'm at peace with myself, and 100%, I did not do anything wrong in this situation. And that's that. Just got to keep moving.
Dude, again, very well said. You've been through some stuff. I'm glad you've gotten past it, come out stronger, whatnot. Hopefully others can refer to this, refer to you and whatnot, I guess, and find strength in it as well. Brooke, thank you for coming on board and whatnot, and for opening up to us and to the audience out there. It means a lot. This has been an episode I've been looking forward to for a while now. We wanted to hear your voice on this and to bring some closure to the situation itself, because as much as I may enjoy the USAPL, and as much as I love the powerlifting, I'm going to say ecosphere, we need a shit ton of fucking work. USAPL can definitely do better. There has to be something done better. And like, it's been a little while, but I'd like to badge them a little bit more about this. They need to do something about this. It's high time something was taking place, and this was actually some action was taken on this and communicated to everybody out there, because this hasn't disappeared. It hasn't gone away. This is indeed in the back of many people's fucking minds. This is your situation, Brooke, by the way. I don't know how many people reached out to me and told me that it was what informed them to actually switch from USAPL to PLA. Many people
It's
aren't.
important.
It is important. It's very important. I think the USAPL is doing itself a disservice by not coming out on this and basically being on the right side of history in the situation. They need to fucking make it happen. Your story is fucking compelling. There's no fucking wiggle room around it. There's no working around a show like that. And this is it's an actual issue. Feel safe in this space and whatnot. And the USAPL needs to be the medium for that. And all federations need to be the medium for that. So hopefully lessons can be learned from this. Brooke, I also understand you're coaching now. You have a couple of clients underneath you and whatnot. Where can people reach out to you at for coaching and for just general guidance and advice and dealing with matters of this nature?
Well, I got to admit, I was coaching, but she decided to take a break. So I actually am no longer coaching right now. And to be honest with you, like, I don't want to put myself in powerlifting any more than I have to. So I actually am not accepting people. But, I will say, like, I've considered doing a lot of things, creating a lot of things out of this situation in my experience. And if anybody wants to have a conversation about these type of things and just life stuff, I wouldn't call it life coaching, but like, I'm open. So like, if anyone needs help with any situation like this, that is where I think I can provide the most value.
And where can they reach out to you at?
Right, you asked me that. Power Brookie.
Power Brookie. So it's all together. POWERBROOKIE.
You know my handle stuff.
Wow, you're good. Yuli wins the spelling bee.
Yeah, I'm active on there. Sometimes I take a little time to respond, but I'm out there. I will say that I'm active in the background in the community, and a lot of people do periodically reach out to me about certain situations. It's unfortunate that certain people don't want to hear about it, but I, for one, will always be somebody to listen and help guide if needed.
Yeah. Love to hear it. Again, so thank you for joining us on this episode. Wish you all the best out there, and to anybody out there, I guess, going through similar situations, reach out to Brooke. You can reach out to us, whatever the case is. Whether we can help out as best we can with these situations. They're very complicated, and many of them may be above our pay grade, but we will try to help out as best we can. Well, on that note,
or we'll point you in the right direction, anyways.
Yes,
and not towards Safe Sport.
Yes. Or at least maybe not towards Scott Gray if possible.
Yeah, that's fair.
That would be a good start.
Yeah.
So that said, thank you guys for tuning in. Looking forward to next time. Peace.